Test. All right, there it is. It works. So I was just going to be a smart aleck and say, anybody that didn't come to this, any of the classified that didn't come, don't get the next raise. I wonder how fast the room would fill up.
Yeah, I'll take that. Okay, so I made a promise in the email that we were going to try to get everybody. We're going to start on time at 2, and we're getting out at no later than 3:30. We want to allow for all questions, Q&A, in case you have some for us. But first off, let me introduce myself for some of you that may not know who I am. My name is William Mosley. I'm the Interim Associate Dean of Human Resources. The reason for today, as you've seen from your email, is that we are working, Human Resources is working in conjunction with SEIU Classified to do a classified study. And what that means to you is that we're going to be coming in to look at, we're having educational management solutions. They're going to come in and they're going to help us to look at all the job descriptions that we have in the district. So they want to look at the job descriptions, they want to look at the duties that you have, and they're going to explain what's going on. One of the things that I want you to know from the start is that, you know, there'll be a lot of rumors and things like that. That's the reason for this meeting. Don't listen to what you hear out scuttlebutt. And it's also important that what you hear today, you share that as well so that everybody knows what's going on. It's a very transparent process. We're working closely with SEIU to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. We met earlier with all the administrators to make sure that they knew what was going on, making sure that they're encouraging everybody to participate. If you have any other questions after today, please go either talk to someone from Human Resources, like myself, Stand Up Elena, or Judy Wong, or Lisa Daniels, or Teresa Melendez from HR. Can I also inform for SEIU, it'll be Athena, Ed, Maria, Carl, and Sean. And so that makes up your committee for the compensation team. I'm keeping this short. If you have any other questions, we can answer them at the end. But right now I'm going to introduce Betty Gray from EMS.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It is a delight to be here. And I want to provide you kind of an overview of the entire project. Am I too close? Is that mic off? Okay, I'm hearing a feedback and I'm not sure why. I'll keep it away from me. Okay, so today we're going to provide an overview. I'm going to do, just a few slides. Give you a little background first off about myself. Our company has worked exclusively with school districts and colleges for the last 20 years. I've been with the company most of that time. I have a fairly good knowledge of California. I'm here from California. In fact, right across the bay in Oakland. So yeah, I'm very local. We have 3 other analysts that are here, Peter, TR, and Olivia. And we have one more that the last I heard, she was on a runway somewhere down in Dallas trying to get here. But she'll be here by tomorrow morning. So to just give you a little bit of an overview, the meeting objective today is just to give you information about the project, to make sure I answer any of your questions. The first start of a classification compensation project is to learn the job analysis portion or to define the classified jobs here at the college. So that will be our first objective, is to define what the jobs are. Then in addition to getting the job descriptions, we will, and you'll notice I will always be using the term job. I'm not writing position descriptions for every classified employee. We're looking at job classifications. So we want to make sure that we're really clear that if there's 15 people all doing the same job classification, that as we're developing the job, that we make sure that we include not only the skill sets that are necessary to do everything, but also to make sure that the functions speak to what you would go out and recruit for and hire for. And then after that, we want to open it for any questions that you have. So, have jobs changed? Good. Do the titles equal the actual roles of the job anymore? Okay. So all of these things we look at, and this is the first part of it. We have to make sure that if we go out, and the reason we look first at what your job is we want to make sure if we go out to the market to look for comparable jobs, we don't compare job titles to job titles. We look at what does this job do, what does this job do, and are the skill sets at least comparable to each other. We don't care what anyone else calls the titles. So we'll look at updating all of your job descriptions and making recommendations on titles that are more common within the industry. We also want to look at the skill sets. We want to make sure that the job requirements reflect what is needed to successfully perform the functions of the job. And then, are there more new jobs that have been created? Did you have an IT department 20 years ago? So a lot of things have changed over time. Not only do we have the changes that have been made over time, but we also have the changes in compliance and laws that we have to make sure that when we're creating or developing job descriptions, that we reflect current practices within the Fair Labor Standards Act, equal pay principles, Ed Code. So we have to make sure that the job description is also in compliance as we go through. We have found that the criteria for success is communication. We've started doing not only employee meetings so that everyone knows, but communication between the committee, which in this case is made up of both SEIU and HR, and that everyone has the same goals in mind, and that is to make sure the job descriptions are updated, they meet the needs of the college, and then also that they're evaluated properly and that you look at the compensation. But our first goal is to definitely make sure we have good job information. The study, you don't get rid of us real quickly. It takes about 4 months, 3 to 4 months to complete the process. So we will start off with making sure that phase 1 is making sure we know and that you agree on the job information and the job descriptions. Phase 2 is looking at the internal and external relationship of the jobs. And phase 3 is us coming back with our findings and our recommendations. So, what do we collect? We look at your current documents, which are the specs, and in a lot of cases, they're very old, and in some cases, it depends on how the turnover's been. We have some new ones. So we review all of your existing documents. We also look at your existing salary schedules. We want to make sure that we have all of the information that will assist us in developing something for the college. We use the focus group approach. when we're developing information. So how many of you have been invited to attend a focus group? Good. The focus group is an hour to 2 hours, and there are normally several different job classifications in one focus group. We have found out over a period of time that we can gather the information needed. All of our analysts do a very similar process. We give about a 5-minute overview of why you're there, and then we have you tell us about your job. The most defensible way to write a job description is to talk to the people who are actually doing the job. So that's why you have been invited to attend the focus group. So for those of you who weren't invited to a focus group, we want your input also. So once we go through the focus group process, we validate that information, then we send drafts out to everyone in that job classification. We want your input. So don't bury it. Fill it out, look at it, respond, because it is your job description, your chance for input into the process. In addition to finding out what you do, we also want to know, what does it take to do what you do? We're looking at the complexity of the job. How much coordination, flexibility, diversity, problem solving do you have to deal with? And in relationship to people, data, and machines, tools, equipment, and work aid. We also look at responsibility, and not just financial responsibility, but we look at, do you oversee anyone else? How closely are you supervised? What kind of resources do you need outside of your own work group? And then consequences of error. This is always an interesting one because it's not errors that you personally would make, but these are liability issues to the college based on the job classification. So again, we look at each of these areas in terms of frequency, and in addition to that, what degree of either liability, resources, financial responsibility that you have. The process takes all of the information that we've gathered through finding out what the job requirements are. There's 33 factors in those items. And within those 33 factors, we look at the internal relationship of the job. And by that, if you had no salary schedule at all, and you took all the classified jobs here, and you decided to find out how they would be paid or how they would be ranked, you would put them in by the amount of complexity, responsibility, skills, knowledges, and abilities. When we talk about, again, laws, the fair pay practices tell you, you have to look at, if you want to pay people differently, you have to look at the same criteria for everyone. So if you're going to pay people on different ranges, then you have to use the same criteria. So every job classification we will look at, we will evaluate it the same way, through the complexity, the responsibility, the skills, knowledge, and abilities that go along with the job. And then you have market. Because we know that you aren't alone. There are places that you leave, people leave and go to that maybe pay more. Not only commuting, but financial also. So we look at, within all of the jobs, we want to go out to the outside market and look at that. So we'll look at it in groups. We want to make sure that we have selected ones that are currently on the salary schedule at low ends, high ends, midpoint, and those jobs that we can gather good information on. We also tend to look at comparable size. We had talked earlier this morning when I was talking to the committee about how jobs grow with the individuals. The longer you've been on a job, the more that job grows around you. And how do you define that as we're looking at it? And that's one of our jobs. One of the reasons we usually ask how long you've been in the job. Gives us a sense. But also, when we look at the size, if you have a one-room schoolhouse, you have many hats that you're wearing to do your job. So you might be the person cleaning, you might be the person instructing, you might even be the person picking the kids up in the bus and bringing them and then fixing the breakfast and lunch for them. So again, then if you're working for something like LA Unified, where there are many different jobs, many different employees, it's very more segregated as far as the skill sets. So again, we are looking here to make sure we understand the job, so when we go out to the market, we have comparables. So whether we look at titles, we want to look at the functions of the job, we want to look at the skill set, and we want to compare it to like industries. We usually look at 8 to 9 sources, and then we look at about 1/3 of the jobs as far as benchmarks. And benchmarks basically means we can get good information on them. And they represent the pay ranges currently at the low, mid, and max, so that we have some comparison to slot the other jobs in as we look at them as far as the family or subfamily they're connected to. And then if there is one particular job that you've been trying to recruit and you can't get anyone either qualified or to get them to even look at the job, we'll take a handful of those also and add them to the market to say, okay, why can't we recruit anyone? We've got a good job description. Is it money? So we'll take a look at that also. So, job descriptions. Purpose statement. The Americans with Disabilities Act is the only one of the compliance laws that actually talks to job descriptions. And within that, they say talk to the functions of the job. So what is a function? A function is an action. What do you do? What do you do it to, the object? And why do you do it, the purpose? And if you look at all of the functions of your job, the overall purpose should be the purpose statement that starts off the first summary of what the job is. We look at the functions in relationship to, are they essential or marginal under the Americans with Disabilities Act? And to determine if a function is essential, we look at, were they hired to perform it? If it was removed, would it fundamentally change the job? And then the evidence and reasons supporting it. So for every function of your job, and jobs are not a desk manual. It shouldn't say everything that you do in a full calendar year. It is a document to go out and recruit from. It's a spec, job description. It tells an applicant, what will I be doing? And so we take that and we look at it from that perspective. And it's usually made up of maybe 10 to 14, 15 function statements. So if it goes on for 3 or 4 pages, it's probably not a good job description. So what we look at is we take all of the tasks that you tell us and we put them into function statements. So how many of you prepare reports? Okay. Somebody just say, why do you prepare them? Anybody? Because you show outcome. Meet some requirement. Somebody wants to know something. Do you handwrite these reports now? That's a pretty good answer. So one of the things we look at is tasks and job descriptions were written very task-oriented. Writes reports, drives buses, mops floors. And what we try to do is get away from those action verbs that aren't pertinent. What you really want to do is you want to prepare a report. You can prepare it on a computer, voice-activated software. There's many ways. The same as I happen to use an example of a policeman. They drive a patrol car. Well, really what they're doing is responding to calls for the purpose of evaluating situations. So they could do it in a car, they could do it on a motorcycle, bicycle, foot. So there's many different methods of doing it. But what we want to do in the function is make sure that we have someone who can evaluate the situation and take appropriate action. So as we go through the job descriptions, we are looking at the overall purpose, the functions, usually around 10, and by the way, performs other duties as may be assigned is always going to be on your job description in some form. Job requirements. This is your skills, knowledge, the complexity, the competencies that you bring to the job that allow you to do any or all of those functions. And then those final things are the administrative type issues like Department of Justice fingerprint clearances, tuberculosis clearances, first aid, CPR, driver's license, commercial driver's license. So again, any kind of additional licenses or certifications that are needed, those we go through and make sure. So by the time we finish the job description, the college has a document that can be used for recruitment, can be used for injury prevention, it can be used for performance evaluation, early return to work. So if you have good job information, it's the center of everything else that you can use that information for. And our company leaves behind a software tool that allows the college to replicate the process as time goes on and jobs change, so that you don't have to wait for us to come back, because we know jobs change every 3 to 5 years. So we want to make sure. This is a project that the committee is going to be actively involved in from start to finish. And what the process is, once we have drafts, information our analysts have, they evaluate the information. We bring in administrators or supervisors to review that information. Then we create a draft that goes back to everyone in that classification for input before it ever comes back to the committee and administration for us to determine the final job descriptions that will go forward as your final. That's kind of an overview of the process. So let me start answering questions. Yes.
I have a comment, question, concern about the focus groups. I'm the only classified member in my entire department, yet I'm the only one that's not included in the focus groups. So, and personally, I take issue with that.
So I want to give the mic to people asking.
Yes, and then I'll stand back over at this one. Yes.
Okay. Can have someone walk around with it? Can you ask the question again for the camera?
Yes, hi. This is about the focus groups. As I said, I'm the only female classified staff member in my entire department, and I'm also the only one that's not included in a focus group. And personally, I take a little bit of an issue about that if you're looking for, information across all genders and races and boards amongst our staff. And I'm just wondering why that is, that the only woman of the department, and if that is across all departments, because I find that a little bit concerning.
I think I can actually answer that if
Yes.
you're all right with that, Betty. So the people that were asked to be on the focus groups, we didn't go by male, female, or any of that kind of stuff. The other thing is, I think you're the only 3598 within your department, right?
I don't know if that's correct. No.
George is a 97. Right? So as I think it was shown earlier, the breakout is like done in families of groups, right? Like the clerks, right? You got a senior clerk, a junior clerk, a clerk. Those things are grouped together. So that's how the structure is set up for these focus groups to happen. So when it came to the TIAs, of which a 3598 is a part of that, we have I think we have like 150, 200 3598s across the district. It's a district-only class, and we had asked up the quantity of folks that are 3598s because for sure a 3598 in child development is not doing the same thing as what you do or what most other 3598s do. So we tried to say, well, this department for sure, we need to talk to a 3598 in that department. I believe in your case, because you're a 3598 in the department, it happens to be that you're the only female in the department, that doesn't have any bearing on what you do as far as the focus groups are concerned on the information that we need for the classifications. However, I also thought I heard Betty say at the beginning that anyone in this room, whether you were invited or not, we still want everybody's input, right? And the other thing is people that are pretty new hires, how do you really know what you're doing yet to be even able to answer what is your job description, right? So you have those things. So the time you've been here was also a consideration whenever we were putting together, okay, this person, or that person in different areas. So we absolutely want everybody's input. Everybody, I think, is going to get the forms to fill out, right, regarding your classification. I guess if somebody's asking, hey, I want to be on a focus group, what is the answer to that, Betty?
The answer to that is if there is space in that group, and I'd have to look at which one, that we could squeeze them in, yes. Other than that, we will get everyone to have input into the process before we're done. So even if you don't attend a focus group, we will definitely make sure you get input via a paper draft that will come to you to add, change, write on, make any comments on that will come back to us. The other thing is if we do find, and there probably will be some that cannot attend, we will do some makeup or some phone interviews also. So we will try to make sure that we have talked or at least input from everyone, whether it be written or in a focus group or an interview before the process is closed. And the process for selecting, I think you did a great job of explaining how you guys went through it.
And for sure, I'm sorry that you're taking it personal because there was no intention of that.
Personal, I just think that it's, especially now at department, I find it interesting that we have 2 male representatives and no female representative in a focus group from our very small department. And yes, I know I've only had this job for 2.5 years, but I think I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, when I was talking about new hires, it wasn't somebody that's been here 2.5 years. So, but everybody's going to have an opportunity to put in their input, right? And no offense, right? Because
No,
trust
I
me.
just wonder how
Well,
Athena, let me also help.
thank you,
We
buddy.
only had a limited number of spaces, because we only had a certain amount of time. So when we just so that everybody understands, we only had a limited amount of spaces for the interviews to happen. And for like the job class that was just described, there were a lot of people in that job class. So when we were choosing, it wasn't like we said, we want this person or that person. We were really looking at pulling out some specific positions in the district that would help us to help EMS to initially get going. But as Betty already explained, nobody really, unless you just choose not to participate at all, nobody's job will be overlooked. So please don't take it as a disparagement of any kind. We just had a limited amount of time and spaces. If you saw all the emails that went out this week, we had a bunch that came out. There's a lot going on at the college with regard to that. This the first 2 weeks. There was a lot of challenges with that. So, please just don't take that as any type of personal affront. We're trying to get to everybody.
We give them a master schedule. We have so many analysts and so many slots for each time. And we say, the problem is, I love auditoriums like this, but if each of you were trying to tell me about your job, you wouldn't be satisfied. And I would only get like every fifth word out of anyone. So that's why we limit the size, and that's why in turn we send it back to you in written form so that you have a chance. And we usually recommend we give you 5 days to look at it, that you can read it over, think about it, and make sure that it does meet your qualifications. So I hope that answers.
It answers my questions, not my concerns, but.
You have a question over here.
I have one here too.
In a classification like 3598, and there's so many of them, and I think there will be a lot of differences in what the different positions do. So how will you handle those that are so much different from in the focus group, from what you get in the focus group?
And you're going to have to tell me what that code is. Is that the Yeah, that's the TIAs. Thank you. Yes, okay. And I have all of those, but I don't have them all in my mind. So what we're looking for is not only the differences that need to be in the different TIA jobs, but also the skill sets that it takes. So right now you have, I think, 2 or 3 classes that are all TIAs. And, oh, perfect, thank you. And within that, we have tried to, or the bargaining unit and the committee of HR have tried to put together unique ones so that we hear those. But what we're trying to do is not create position descriptions. So what we have to look at is similar functions and similar skill sets that meet the recruitment needs of both the college and to get qualified people into the particular areas. So until we've actually met with, I can't tell you how it's going to come out. I know that I just finished Napa Valley College, and we had the same issue there. And we had to actually go back and do a second interview of those that wanted to come. And I don't know if that'll be necessary or not, but we're always open to making sure we have the best information.
So for 3598s, there's 116 3598s at this college, right? So of course we can't have all 116 3598s in a focus group. So what we tried to do as a committee was get, like Athena was saying, get 3598s, 1 from or 2 in child development if they're doing something different, right? There might be 2 in child development. They do totally 2 different things. And then maybe there's 3598s in the PE department. They're doing something totally different, 3598s over there, right? So one of the things that we stressed to EMS was our 3598s and 3597s, and I think it's 3599s, do far different work than a 1426. A 1426 or a 1406 are more closer in doing the same kind of jobs than the 3598s. So it was important for us to make sure that although we can't capture or have every 116 in a focus group, that somehow we capture every 116 of your input. And that's why we decided and we wanted to make sure they did some kind of questionnaire where we have your input. So it has nothing to do with gender or anything like that, or sometimes you might think someone's the same classification as you are in your department, but you're really not. You're totally, totally different. And even if you are, within that same department, in that same division, your work is so far different, it's unbelievable. And that's one of the primary reasons why we want to do this class comp study, to figure out what is it everybody's doing and what is the right classification that each individual in this college, the classified employees, where you need to be and what you actually should be doing, how you should be classified. Okay?
And how it should be compensated.
Oh, most important thing, how to be compensated, yeah.
I thought you were just telling me to pass the mic. I didn't mean to.
No, it's all right, it's right. So I have been invited to one of the focus groups. How should I...
And you're a 3598?
I am a 3598, so how should I prepare for this? Am I going there to represent other 3598s, or am I there to sort of tell my story? How should I come into the focus group? What should I be prepared for?
Yes. I'll take the mic back now. Okay, what we would want you to do is, since we will have a group of probably, I think, 15 in your group, so there would be quite a few of you. We want you to come represent yourself. If, in fact, you can add to the group because of your years or experience within the college, then yes, we would want you to add to it. But you're there to give us information on your particular job. The reason we do focus groups with similar type jobs is because you feed off each other. Somebody will say, well, I prepare XYZ report, and they go, well, I don't do that, but I do this. And it's also a type of report. So we gather information by the group process as well as the individuals. Our primary purpose is to be able to create a job description. And so when I say come to the focus group, be prepared to talk about your job, that's really what I'm looking for. But you add to the total group by just being there. Okay.
When we talk about job, you know, I
Can't hear you.
Thank you. I'm from John Adams Center. When you talk about job, if I know, I give you an example. I know a person that, a classified person. Her job have some job requirement that require bilingual, shift difference, and flexible work hours. Do you expect her to, he or she, expect the participants say her working conditions?
You're actually looking for, if we have individuals in the focus group who work different shifts and have to be bilingual, and the bilingual has to be on the job description. In other words, if that person left, would we replace them with a bilingual person? And therefore, we would want that information. And I have not looked and analyzed your salary structure. Some places give a stipend for bilingual, others do not. So I've got to look to see how the compensation piece of it is for it.
Contractual.
It is contractual, okay. So as far as shift differentials, that probably is also contractual. So those are things that we don't get into because that is negotiated for you via your contract and your SEIU representatives. What we look for is to make sure that the job description reflects the skills and the functions that are required so that we can say where it should be compensated. Then they negotiate that with the college. Is that okay?
I'm a 3616 in the library unit, and we are a part of civil service. So we basically go with the umbrella of the entire San Francisco system. If we find that there are differences, for example, we are a college unit here versus the city public library, where there are huge differences in our jobs that we do. Is that something that the committee would be looking at, possible divisions off of that? Or is that something that we are stuck with because of the union and how that's set up?
We have to keep in fact that you are part of the civil service and the city and county. But we also have to look at your job description as your specs. And then we need to make sure that we create a job description for the college, but we also have to keep in mind the specs for the city and county.
So,
Did that say right?
So what I'm asking though is, does that mean that there could be separate qualifications, be a 3616 with the district, the school district, or I should say the community college district versus the public library?
Yes, there could be different job requirements.
Hello, I'm Lisa from Human Resources Department, and to respond to your question, pretty much what Betty said is correct. However, as far as the minimum qualifications, we are required to keep those minimum qualifications in line with the city and county of San Francisco. But within the job itself, there is flexibility to reflect the job duties that you are performing in the 3616 here. However, the minimum qualifications remain the same, whether it's here or whether it's the public library. That's important because whenever there's a situation with displacement, layoff, bumping, that's all in one category basically, those job qualifications, minimum qualifications must be the same in order for people to be displaced. So it's built into the system that way. So there will not be another tier of qualifications through this process.
And to me, that's a plus because, like you said, you're a citywide classification, so there's already some structure as far as that description of that job, like whatever the class is, which is different for our district-only classes, which we have more of those than civil service.
Earlier, I saw a slide on market comparison, and I wanted to find out a little bit more about which school are you going to compare against us?
We're going to work with the council. That's why I was walking around with them. It was easier if I just walk around with this. What we will do is we'll work with the committee to come up with what your comparable like either districts or colleges that you should be compared with. And we'll come up with 7 or 8 either comparable colleges and or school districts that you would have. In some cases, there are some school districts that would have jobs. Mostly we would compare colleges, and depending on, we also have cities, counties, we have private sector. But I can tell you right now, from doing lots and lots of market comparisons, the private sector, if you want to go work in the private sector, then you can, but that is very hard for us to get good information from them on the salary structures. Public entities, we can get good information. They have to give it to us.
Okay, I'd like to respond with it.
Yeah.
So when you ask the question from, it's saying market value up there, SEIU and part of the committee, SEIU, us being on the committee and part of that, SEIU will always try to argue, even when they tell us you can't argue about it anymore, and that is to compare us to what? Our brothers and sisters in city and county, because that's where our classifications live and breathe and die, right? So yes, we absolutely will continue. Our focus is that, if they want to, and the district tells Betty's group to, okay, we want you to compare to Unified or to other colleges across the state, go ahead. But at the end of the day, our interest is with the city and county. That's why folks leave here, right? Because our compensation is so far behind right now. So just so you know and everybody's clear, our argument is our comparison needs to be at city and county with civil service.
Second question. I have a second.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it's good to hear that we're going to compare city and county of San Francisco as a benchmark, right? Because we're right underneath them. And pretty much most of the classifieds are equally over there, right, the numbers. And in terms of, earlier I heard low, mid, and high. If we are comparing community college district, low, mid, and high, against San Francisco city and county, low, mid, and high, I want to, I guess, I'm not sure if you guys already know, step 6 to 10, it's not quite directly comparable to the cities, right? You need to reach 30 years here to get step 10, right? So if I want to say 1 to 5 is mid, low, mid, and high, not the 10. If you use the 10, then you screw the number.
Let me clarify that. When I'm talking about low, mid, and high, I'm talking about we take all of the job classifications and we look at them in terms of internal equity, complexity, responsibility, and skills and knowledge and working conditions. And we take all of those and we look at them within their families and subfamilies, like administrative support, information technology, and we look at them from the low end of the salary within that group to the high end of the salary within that group, so that we have benchmark job classifications that are at the entry level, the midpoint, and at the top. So if you had account clerk or accounting assistant 1 and you had an accountant 5, we would take both the top and the bottom, and then we would take a job that would fall in the middle, so that we would have a overview of what those job classifications should be compensated at. We will also look at your salary structure, which you're talking about, which is that the city goes to step 6 or 10.
They go to 5.
They go to 5. So what we would do is we look at how the width of your salary schedule versus the sources that we use in comparison. So we would look at comparing the top of yours to the top of theirs.
No, the top of theirs is not limited to age of service, whereas the
Do you
top
have
of
longevity?
So let me help out a little bit here. So we line up with city and county with steps 1 through 5, okay? Both in city and county and here, there's about 5% in between step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. After you get to step 5 here, when you go to step 6 and beyond up through 10 now, those are all about service time. Those are longevity steps. So you're comparing apples and oranges here. right? So there's no way the union would allow this group, as they're doing their assessment and gathering information, to say, well, wait, at step 10, 3598 makes X, and, well, I can't use that because it's not citywide. A 1426 makes this at City College, and the high end over at Unified or City and County is step 5, right? You can't compare apples and oranges, right? So we would not let that happen. So just so everybody in here knows, right, it's after step 5, those are service, time, longevity steps, not about, can I start at step 6 or can I start at step 9 or 10? You will, I believe we've not broken any of that rule, Lisa probably can answer. Nobody coming in here new can start past step 5 or step 5. Nobody has been started at anything beyond that. It just doesn't happen because that's service time. That's correct. Thank you.
And that would be the same with all longevity. And when we look at longevity in any of the other market sources, we would also count that off. We only use the actual steps.
Hi, good afternoon. I was just wondering, with EMS, is the objective to match the employees' function to equal the job title? Because I know there's a lot of, well, I know some people whose function doesn't equal their job title. And I'd like to know how that's going to be rectified and how it will affect their benefits and retirement later down the line.
Okay, first, we always recommend that no one be penalized for either seniority or reduction in salary, that there is Y rating. I don't know if you use Y rating here or grandfathered, or there's different methods and different terminology that is used. So to answer your question there, we do recommend job titles. So if we found that, let's say there's a new job, and that job comes out during the focus group process, and it's not currently on, we would then either make a recommendation that that have a new title and be added. So again, if we see, let's say there's 5 levels of secretary, and I'm making this up, and I don't know for sure, there could be 5. We would look at it and say, you know, the skill set for levels 1 and 2 are exactly the same and the functions are the same. Why not consolidate those pieces of paper, not the people, the pieces of paper, and recruit for one new job title? So we do look at titles and both new jobs and consolidated jobs as we go through the process.
So earlier when Diana Gonzalez was here, the Vice Chancellor of HR, during the administrative meeting that we were here, she said very clearly to them that the goal and the outcomes of this and the work that's going to be done to get there, there's to be no punitive actions at all. So that's number 1. And we're going to hold the district to that. And number 2 is the question came up about, well, wait a minute, if that happens, what Betty just described is, wait, we might think we need to take 2 classifications and put them in a new one. Then the first question that comes up, well, wait a minute, what just happened to all my seniority, right? Or now, because I'm starting new in a new class, because of this, the outcomes of this, now I'm potentially a target to be bumped from folks at city and county, right? I think we have to work all of those things out to have safeguards, right? If those kind of things come out where we put people in one class or whatever. Because the other thing that I was thinking right away is we're not going to, even if that happens, we're not going to say, all right, we don't need, let's just pretend, right? And nobody take this, you know, that I'm directing a class, right? But let's say they decide that 1424s and 1422s are almost identical in the way they look. Well, what happened in city and county was they then put everybody in the 1422 class because it paid less. We're not about that. If we decide from all this information that yes, we need to put them in a different class, it's going to be the higher paid one, not the lower paid one. So we're just not going to function that way, right? This is supposed to be to clarify what is it you're actually doing in the class that you've been given and hired under. right? And to clarify that, whether, it doesn't matter what class you are, it's like, what do you actually do at your job? You know, like when Susan asked earlier, right? It's like, how do I prepare? You just be honest and forthright in what am I actually doing. You should know what your classification is and what you were hired under, right? You probably have that document somewhere, a hiring document, right, that had some kind of a job description on it. So there should be no punitive is the thing. We should all be celebrating that this is happening. They haven't done this here at the college since 1992. Clara told us earlier today, right? So this has been going that way all these years where it's kind of helter-skelter, and we want to make sure that folks are being compensated for the work that they're doing and that they're in the right class. That's really the gist of this. So, questions? I'm sorry. And then Ms. Angela wanted to say something.
So the appointment time that I received is outside of my normal work hours, but I have a coworker who would like to switch with me. We're a different classification. Can we do that?
I don't believe so, because if it's one person and one person in those classifications, you might be able to work that, but because there's multiple people that were scheduled, we might not be able to do it, but that doesn't mean we don't get back to it. We had a number of people that had that kind of challenge. And so, as Betty was saying earlier, for everybody that isn't able to make their focus group meeting, it doesn't mean that there's no bite at the apple. We still are going to be getting back to you, as Betty described before. Everybody will be heard. So if you can't make it, don't worry, we're going to get back to you, okay?
What I want to say is, first, hello. How y'all doing? We need you. Okay? We need you. Why? Because we have already told these lovely people that we have this 35, 97, 98, 99 pink elephant. That's some of y'all. Then we got the pink elephants that got the bunny tails. And we got the pink elephants that got purple stripes and blue stripes and no trunk and koala faces. I'm serious. And then, now that's y'all. That's the whole pink elephant crew with all their different iterations. And we have said there are some serious differences. I expect to see this poor woman running with her hair on fire before this is over, and her little team. Now for the rest of you that are PCS, that have been here more than 5 minutes, you have watched from 08 on, you have watched your coworker leave, and that coworker leave, and no, you're not a pink elephant, but you got your head, your other coworker's arm, your other coworker's leg. You don't even look like yourself with your classification. They gotta muddle through that. So I'm telling you, I'm asking you, and I'm begging the others, participate. Because this is huge, this is some heavy lifting, and it's not gonna get done well or correctly if you don't come to your focus group. And please, ma'am, and please, sir, do your survey. Please. This is important to us, that we put our best foot forward in this, okay? That's what I wanted to say.
I'm going to come right up to you because you were next. I just want to dovetail on what Angela said, because the majority of you received the email from me last week about being here for the kickoff meeting as well as the focus group. And I appreciate what you said and what you said with regard to the attendance, that you wanted to be in the focus group. And it's really disappointing to me that some of the people that I know that we sent the message out aren't here. I know over the weekend I received 3 messages from people saying, it's not worth it to me. And that's resounding for me because, as Angela said, this is really important. And the number one reason for this meeting isn't so much just about the focus group, isn't so much about the kickoff. It is that this kickoff meeting is for us to be able to understand what is going on so that you did get to ask the question. So you do know, you can say, hey, I don't feel I'm getting the representation, and how are you going to deal with that? Those things need to be addressed, and we want to make sure that you get that out there. We want to make sure that it's as transparent as possible. So for the people that didn't come, if you see them in the hallway, say, hey, you guys need to get with it, and you need to get to your meeting because you need to be representing us as best as you can. These two, and then I'll come over to you. Okay?
I still like the idea I started with before some of you got here, and that was the ones that didn't come today don't get the next raise. How do you like that? You vote on that? Yes, sir.
What I was going to say
second
is,
that. Yeah, I second that.
Amen. What I was going to say is, what if you go through this process and you find that, like in my situation, a lot of people's situation, that they come in as a 3598, and then the downturn in the economy kicked in, all that stuff. I mean, I remember when I first got hired, it all came crashing down, and our jobs immediately changed. And let's say you find 3598s doing budgets, payroll, stuff like that.
We will.
And guaranteed you're going to find that sort of stuff. In our case, it happened all the time because people were leaving, getting fired, laid off, you name it. What's going to happen to those people? Like, let's say you find a 3598. I'm not talking about myself, but doing like payroll for a department, hiring, also doing the purchasing and managing the full numbers and all that stuff. Does that person get bumped up, or do they just reclassify 3598 as a analyst 3598 or something? Does it make sense?
It certainly did. First, we need to know. You have to tell us what you really are doing. Then we will look at it, and from that determine if this now is for the whole class, if it's for just one particular person who has taken on more stuff. So that's where we have the problem of not knowing has one individual taken on more responsibility, or is it something that is now part of that job? And the answer would be, if you left, would they hire for somebody? And I'm using you even though you said it wasn't you. If you left, would they want to hire a person who could come in and do the payroll and all of those things? So would it become part of that job? And then that's what we evaluated on.
So the other part that concerns me, and especially addressing that, most all of us, and Betty just touched on it for a little teeny bit when she did the presentation, right? All of us know that on your job announcement where you were hired, right, on the description at that point, it said at the bottom what?
Other duties.
Other duties as assigned, right? So we need to be mindful of what does that actually mean, right? In each class, you have a basic structure of that classification, right? So it doesn't mean when we lost, for some of you new folks, at one point we had 998 classified. We have 630 is the numbers hovering around that for the last year, right? 630. Just that alone creates 300 jobs, right? More than 300 jobs that somehow somebody else got pieces of that work to do, right? And the other example that's real easy to make, because most of you got impacted by it, is payroll responsibility, right? When the person, whatever the class was, when they left, somebody still had to do payroll, so people just stepped up, so we all got paid, and it's changed from one class to another class to another class to another class, taking on the responsibility to make sure you got paid. So when you're interviewed, you might say, well, now I do payroll, right? Whether you're 3598 or a 14, whatever, it doesn't matter. All the way up, 1823s are doing payroll. So that issue around, that's why it's so important for you to tell exactly what it is you're doing. Because when those 300 people left, yes, maybe you did take on the responsibility of, wait, I'm doing way outside 3598 job description. And maybe you're not. It might fall under other duties as assigned. Right? Because the argument with payroll is, well, that's data entry. To me, with the responsibility that has to make sure people get paid is more than data entry. But that's just my own perspective. Right? John?
So I feel like I want to
defend my brothers and sisters who aren't here at the meeting. I was scheduled to be in a classroom full of computers, setting up 40 brand new computers for a class that started a week ago and needs them. And I'm here instead because I was chosen to be in a focus group. So even though my department is 11 people short, we have 11 vacancies, and even though everyone in the department is completely working their full work schedule, somebody jumped in to back me up. So she's not here. So she gets no blame for that. How many people here, somebody's going to jump in and do your job for the 2 hours you're here and the 2 hours that you're going to be in the focus group, so you won't have to make up that work later on?
Probably not.
Nobody.
Yeah.
So you've challenged us to be here, and we are. But I, for one, have been to a lot of meetings, and there's been a lot, not about this, but about a million other things at City College, and there's been a lot of talk, and a year later, there's been absolutely nothing done. So you've challenged all of us to be here, and we are. Now I'm going to challenge you to actually make something happen with this. Don't let this be something that, whatever happened to that thing that we went to that meeting for 2 years ago? I don't know, nothing ever came of it. Okay. All right.
I can tell you that for sure. We work with this with SEIU as part of the look back.
This is actually, this thing happening was something that was negotiated.
It was negotiated.
Right? So
And-
this has to be done by the end of our contract for July 1. So that's why, as Betty said, it takes 3-4 months, and then everybody's input and then revisiting it and all of that. So this is going to be tied to our money for our contract. That's what this is really about.
As that gentleman just put, there's a lot of people that are here today within the first 2 weeks of school that there's a pressure, and SEIU is pressuring us. Can we do it in a couple more weeks? Can we do it in a couple more weeks when it's a little slower? And the answer was, no, we can't. And the reason being is that we need to get Betty and her team rolling right now in order for us to be ready to go at the end. It's going to take them at least 3 to 4 months just to do all the analysis and come back with us to say this is what you're going to do. And then for SEIU to start opening up with sunshine in the wintertime for the contract, so that we're all set to go with that. So there's a lot of things tied into this timeline. So yes, by this time next year, you should see the results of everything that you're doing, okay? And actually it should be summertime.
Right.
By the summertime that you'll start to see it.
It should. It's going to
Yeah.
happen.
So, I mean, that was our commitment as a group. And that's the reason why it was important for us to be united up here, because this is what we talked about doing, and this is what the district's commitment to everybody is to get done. So let me be real clear on speaking on all of our behalves that we are committed to making this happen, and by this time next year, we should be hopefully in a way better situation than we were yesterday.
And I'm sorry, I don't have my distance glasses with me. These are for reading. I left the office too quickly to grab those. I just want to add to that the fact that Athena mentioned that this is for negotiations, or it was negotiated. In addition to that, I've worked in human resources for a number of years, and I'm fortunate to work with someone who works very diligently with me, actually the entire team that works with us in the classified unit, specifically to the jobs that you're working in. And Judy Wong is here as well, and she's the person I'm speaking of in this room that works very diligently. So in addition to negotiations, Judy and I are looking at these jobs every day. That's what we do. That's what we're hired to do. So there's no complaint in that. That's our job. But in addition to negotiations, we look at the inequity. We see what the city pays. We see what the district pays. So in addition to negotiations, there's times where we're going and we're saying, hey, we need to look at this. This needs to be addressed. This needs to be considered. We're way out of alignment. So those conversations also happen. So I'm glad to be here to see this come to a point where it is in negotiations, because we've been talking about it for a number of years, and we're looking at these things all the time. I also want to add to that and say, for the number of years that I've been here, 25 for me, Athena's correct, whoever mentioned about 1992, this has not been done. So it is very important, and it's an opportunity. I also look at it this way, and I haven't heard this mentioned yet. I don't plan to be here for another 25 years, but there's someone that's coming behind me that will hopefully step into the job that I'm in, do a better job, but those jobs need to be clear so that the district knows what to recruit for. For each one of you, if we don't make it back to our jobs tomorrow, we need to have clear definitions of what these jobs are so that the district can do the best job to fill the jobs. That is why this is also very important. Every time you put a job announcement out there, I have an analogy for you. When you go shopping, there's a price on something, right? And it says, it's $5.99. And then you take it and they ring it up and they say, that'll be $8.13. What do you say? Wait a second. The tag on this said $5.99, right? That's what all of us do when we shop. It's the same way with the job. People need to come into the job as it is announced, and they start the job, when you do an evaluation, all of the things that tie to it. So it's the starting point, but everything else follows that. And there may have been a slide that Betty showed to represent that. But again, I won't be here 25 years from now, but someone will step into the job, and we need to have a very accurate reflection of what the job is. I just wanted to add that to the comment.
Thank you.
Hi, I just want to make a comment. I thank you, Lisa, for your words. I also can understand the frustration with having been to a million meetings and you feel like there's been so many things promised in the last years and you're like, what's happening? But I always, as in my personal life, I'm not an optimistic person, but this job makes me optimistic. I'm optimistic because I see people here from the centers, which is great. A lot of times we're an ocean-centered, personnel. I see people from Gulf Street, from Human Resources. There's people who have a big interest in seeing this succeed because of the things that Athena was talking about, fighting to make sure that we have the best compensated personnel. And that the fact that this is a collaborative effort between SEIU and HR, and the boots on the ground folks who are Judy and Lisa, who are the ones working with the city day in and day out to try to be good stewards of this process of hiring people to have the same min-quals, et cetera, and having a process with integrity that we have. So I just wanted to make a comment that, I'm optimistic about the outcome of this study, and I hope that everyone participates, whether you're at a focus group or whether you are, send your written feedback. Everyone's participation is really important.
Any more questions? Anybody? Over here? Up here.
One more question. Going back and looking at the city and county of San Francisco against the community college district, right? Us and the city. We are behind. We all know that, but some of us may not know that we are behind, not for a set percentage parallel for the job class that belongs in both sides. Right? Some are, I randomly looked at it.
They're all over the place.
Yeah, they're all over. Or can we somehow match that to one single number? If they're the same class, city and district. Why does one class get closer to the city?
Well,
and why does the other class get a bigger gap?
Two separate employers, two separate budgets, right? How long have you been here?
Less than a year.
Okay. So there was a time, probably almost 20 years ago now, where when we first negotiated RWW, spring break, additional days off with pay during the winter break, and I'm sure there's a lot longer list. When we negotiated those things 20 years ago, we were ahead of city and county because we were lined up with the salary schedule, plus we had these extra added value benefits. So as time has moved on, accreditation from hell happened for 5 years. Everybody's budgets went different directions. So that's why we are where we are today. Even more reason why we need to do this study to see, okay, how far once we figure out what is your job description in your class and get that all tightened up, right? Then it's like, okay, now what are we looking at and who, which, you know, is going to be other colleges or other colleges and city and county, whatever is looked at for that classification, for each of the classifications then, to see what the compensation looks like. Like, let me give you another example. My class that I'm in, I'm a 1762. Okay? There's only 2 of us left in the entire system of civil service because of the way jobs have changed, right? I'm a printer by trade, right? And as graphics and all that kind of stuff has moved forward and equipment is outdated and antiquated, and now it's all computer, not iron and water and oil and all that kind of stuff, right? Mixing. It's different. It's a different day. So, but if you look at our classification, mine and Levi's, who are 1762s, only one in the system, citywide class, we're ahead of the folks at city and county. Why? Not because somebody just said, oh, we're going to pay Athena and Levi more in your class as a 1762. They don't use that class in the city anymore. So when the raises came citywide within their negotiating, right, they didn't add the compensation to a class they don't use anymore. So then our class looks like we get paid more than the old. If you look at the old numbers in the city, they're less than what my class or our class makes as a 1762. There's a lot of reasons why each class is a little bit different, either ahead or behind our sisters and brothers counterparts in just looking at city and county. So there's a lot of stuff, right? And I think that's part of what their work's going to be, to do this analysis, but it starts with talking to what is it that you do for your job in your class. Does that help you? Does that answer your question?
Yes, but there is the same class number that exists in both sides.
Yes.
As of now.
Yes.
I would think the parallel difference should be the same for them against us, right?
So, all right, so let me use my class again as the example. They still list the class 1762 in the city, but because I make more now at City College as a 1762, are you saying with that scenario that I should get a pay cut?
No, I'm only comparing to the one that has the same job class in both, currently as of today. Yours does not exist anymore, right?
But, all right, so then let me use a different, yes, that is true. So even though they still list it, so you can go there and look at it as a comparison, right? So let's just use 1406, okay? So our 1406s make more on the salary than they do in city and county. Because what happened was, and, you know, this is more history, years ago at city and county, I don't know how, where's Tanya, what year was it, dear? 2009. 2009, thank you for being here and helping the elder out here. So in 2009, the city and county did this whole big layoff of the 1424s and 26s. And what did they do over there? They put them in 1402, 1404, and 1406 classifications. Why? Because it paid less. So they did a de-skilling because they said typewriters are gone, okay? Even though the union argued in the city, well, but we're doing computer work and that takes more skills, but they lost that argument in the city. So they moved all these people. So a lot of layoffs and bumps to try to get rid of 1424s, 26s, etc., and move them into a clerk class that was similar without typing attached to it. So when that happened in the city, we went to Art Tyler, one of the many chancellors that we've had during the accreditation hell that we went through. That was one thing he did do for SEIU. We said, all right, Tyler, we don't want the same thing to happen over here. So what he did is he went in and he said, all right, we're going to pay the 1404s or 6s the same as the 24s and 26s. Right? So that if we got people bumping in or people were going to get harmed by having to get bumped out of here, that they would not be impacted by their salary being less. So we didn't allow it to be a de-skilling. So right now when you look at 06s and 04s here, they make more than they do in the city. So there's all different individual iterations and rationale and history that brings us to where we are today. Another reason why we need this so desperately. Angela? Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? All these things that we have in the contract that are negotiated in benefits have money attached to them, right? What is RWW worth? 6.25. 6.25. So that's the other thing the district will look at. They'll say, wait a minute, you have RWW, you work 37 and a half hours and get paid for 40. That's worth 6.25%. So if you're only 6.25% behind on the salary schedule, then that means what? You're making the same. That's what the administrator would look at and say, well, wait a minute, you can't argue your salary's less because you have this other benefit. Okay? So the money's attached every place it can be attached, and time, it's not like they just gave us that. That was negotiated with us because they didn't have money to give us.
Athena, we have 6 minutes left. Quick question. Who has the sign-in sheet, page number 2?
Page 2 sign-up sheet.
Page 2.
They took it with them.
Was it both sides? All right. Has anybody not signed yet, other than Tanya? All right. Before you get out, we're going to have it up. We're going to have another one up here, and we're going to ask you to sign it on your way out of here. We want to make sure everybody's accounted for. Thank you, Tanya.
Oh, I was just going to say, really and truly, we were really getting off a track. I think this young lady, with you being new, welcome to the college, and I really think you should come to one of the SEIU meetings or just go over to the bungalow and talk to one of the stewards. They can really answer your question. But I felt we was getting off track. So, and the time is almost up, and I'm not going to take any more time. Thank you.
We need to end exactly 3:30 because that was the promise, the same way that we promised we were going to get this done as well.
So when you do find that, you will find some classifications are to be reclassified, will we have to interview for those, or how will that be changed?
That is normally something that would be.
Yeah, it's the whole process, right? The whole process is like, okay, I'm out of class, so now what happens, right? So there has to be a process, number one, to prove it, and then number two, then it's like, okay, now we have to negotiate, what does that look like to resolve your grievance of being out of class? Because out of class is normally a grievance, okay? Hope that answers the question. And I believe we're going to find some of those going both directions. People are working above their class and people are working below their class.
Okay, I want to thank all of you very much for being here, and I do realize it is the second week of school, and it is very tiring to get away to come into a meeting in the middle of the afternoon. But as everybody has said, it's very important that you participate, and thank you very much for your time here today.